Yeah, so are we starting? Should I
Yeah,
just
we're starting. We're starting.
Okay.
It's although it's whatever. Yeah, we're in it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, Abby knows a lot about this. My partner, Abby,
Hi,
and
Abby.
Abby's in the other room.
Hi, Abby.
Um, yeah, I think I have a really hard time seeing myself, which I didn't always. I think I'm realizing that I didn't really think about what I looked like on social media and photos or anywhere until the pandemic. And then it just like a switch flipped, and I just have the hardest time now. Um, yeah, I don't really know exactly what it was. I mean, obviously a lot of things happened in that time. And I've made some changes in my life since then. So I'm no longer on social media now. Personally, like I go on there for my job. Um, but like I don't follow people, I don't follow friends, I just follow artists. So it's very much I've made some behavioral changes, but still, it seems like even with these changes, I get so in my head and anxious and worried about what I look like, even on these calls, which I do with my clients a lot. And
Yeah.
um, I always offer like to do video calls with them because I think it's nice to meet someone you've never met this way. But although phone calls are cool too, and sometimes my writer clients prefer that. Yeah, but I have to minimize my face. Like if I'm on Google Meets, I have to like click it and get it away, or like when I'm doing therapy, and we talk about things like this, I have to make sure I'm not looking at myself. It's so distracting. And it makes me really sad sometimes. And sometimes it's fine, but I get so nervous I'll feel sad that I just try to avoid it a lot. And then it comes to like, you know, what's it called? When you like exposure therapy. It's like, yes, it's good
Yeah.
to be able to practice seeing myself in ways. So I try not to completely cut it
Yeah.
out,
hmm
but it is still tough. So that's, yeah, something I think about a lot.
I know, I think it's really interesting. And I'll just say, and don't respond to this right now, but I'm gonna call you a writer and a writer that works with other writers and also a graphic artist and an artist. So just when you mentioned before your clients and that kind of thing, you work with writers. But I just want to go back to what you said before we move on about, um, I don't know, it sounds like you became conscious of looking at yourself and issues around that came about during the pandemic. And so I'm just wondering, is that because like all we had was images of ourselves on screens and we weren't with other people? Like, was there something about, I don't know, maybe just like the reliance on social media at that time period, in that like end of the world time period?
I think I've thought about this a lot. I'm really not sure what the trigger was for this big change, in how I see myself or how I'm able to like handle seeing myself. Um, I know that before the pandemic, I felt pretty neutral, which was a comfortable place for me. And then after it started to skew negative. And I think, like I mentioned social media before, there was a lot of content that I was starting to get in my feed around then that I'd never gotten before. And I've talked to other people about this too. And it seems like it's a lot of other people were targeted with this as well. But like there was a lot of cosmetic procedures that were happening during the
Yeah.
pandemic, I think. And I think there was like I've read about this since. I think a lot of people were anxious because there was the
Yeah,
pandemic.
yeah. I mean, a
And I
lot
think
of
a lot of
reasons.
people, right, were like looking at themselves on Zoom in a way that, like, in a volume that they never had before.
Yeah.
Um, and that probably started some things. And then, like, yeah, we're filming ourselves in our home, taking selfies, and that's how we're like, you know, like interacting with people.
Yeah. And like projecting your image out very, whatever, carefully for some people.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I just started to see a lot more of that and be like, whoa, I don't like this at all. I don't like this pressure. Um, yeah, I was considering things too that I'd never even thought of, like the shape of certain parts of my body that I'd never thought of before, that I was like, oh, all of a sudden there's like a thing for this to fix. It's like classic uh modifying women's bodies at any chance you can get to
Yeah.
a dime, right? But for me, it was like once those doors were opened, I had a really hard time closing them. So I'm like, wow, I never thought about like, I don't know, my neck in this way, or I don't know, like
Yeah.
really anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think social media played a part because of the pandemic, for
Yeah.
sure.
So you're a writer, and this is a question I don't know, and I don't know you that well. I'll just say, right? This is the deepest conversation we've ever had, except for moments where we'll just like be at a gathering and maybe I'll be very depressed and just tell you a lot of dark thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. Good times.
Good times, yeah. Um, so when I first met you, I was like, Hannah's a writer. And I remember sitting at a table and you talking about novels that you had written and just being deeply impressed by that. And then I also know that you started your own thing, helping other writers. And I also know that there's a lot of struggle in there for you. So I have a question, which is what I mean, you can kind of tackle this however way you want, but I have struggled with like the relationship between being someone who wants to get their own voice out there versus helping other people with theirs and having absolutely no idea how to focus in some ways because of I need to make money. So I guess I just want to throw that to you and say, like, what do you think about that? What's your position there or positions?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot there, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. So as you said, I have been writing on my own for a long time. I hired a developmental editor, which is what I am now. I'm a developmental editor for fiction novels and fiction
Which
writers.
which means that you work with
Yeah, so
people early on.
Yeah, so developmental editor as opposed to like copy editor, proofreader, line editor is someone who's gonna help you with the structural parts of your story. So again, I work with fiction writers, not really nonfiction at the moment or memoir writers. So I'll go in and like help you work on your character development or pacing issues, scene structure, all that fun high level stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. And it's great. I love it. But I'd never heard of it back when I was writing my first book. And so I found this woman who I ended up hiring as my developmental editor. And I was like, wow, this is so wonderful. Actually, I really like
To
what
help
she does.
with you. Okay, so you worked with someone who did that to help you with your work.
Right. Yeah. And that was kind of my first step into like what this was. I didn't even know, different types of editing.
Okay.
And I liked it. I thought she did a pretty good job, and I was like, I think I could maybe do this. But I was like, at the time I was working in social media. I worked as a social media manager, marketer, designer for what, 6, 7 years. So that was like most of my professional career was working in marketing and design. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll think about this. So I put it in my back pocket, and then I started to think about what do I want to do? I don't want to do social media anymore. I'm feeling
Yeah.
a little burnt out, and I still feel very burnt out on it. I'm so glad I pivoted. That was the right call. And I was like, well, what should I do? And it never really occurred to me to be a full-time writer. I've always wanted to write on the side and work a
Mhm.
job.
Yeah.
So I always really wanted both. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, will it be strange if I become an editor? And then of course I realized like there are so many editors, especially freelance ones who write as well.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think maybe this makes sense. But I like had it in my head that I was like some type of, um, like imposter syndrome. I was worried that if I wanted to write, I would be taken less seriously as an editor and vice versa if
A
I'm,
hundred
yeah,
percent. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it turns out it's okay. It's actually okay. I feel very at peace with being able to do both. And I do both. So
Hmm.
I split up my schedule very intentionally. So far it's been rather smooth. I can understand it being really difficult when you have even more writing projects, but I've finished the third draft of it, the second draft and the third draft of one of my stories the past 6 months. It's in the hands of beta readers right now, and I'm working with several clients, so I'm able to
Yeah.
do both things, which was the dream. But yeah, I had a lot of doubts. I had a lot of like, what is this going to mean to be
Yeah.
both? Um,
Yeah.
I started, and I still think about those things a little.
So how do you break it up? Because that's very beautiful and sounds so honest when you actually say that it's flowing and working. I believe you. So how do you do it?
Um, yeah, how do I do it?
I mean,
Okay,
even
so
if it's a messy sort of plan, just like what you vaguely even like,
yeah, no, I'm very type A. So I schedule things out. I do time blocking. Like I create my schedule and I usually stick to it. Also, and this is something I tell my writers if they're ever struggling with multiple projects, I work in phases. That's my favorite way to work. So like, um, and I do this in both my developmental editing role and as a writer. So like let's say this month I want to finish working on edits for the third draft of my story. I'm gonna like try to figure out, I've done this before, so I know how long it's gonna take pretty much. And then I'll just go in my calendar and say, I'm blocking out mornings every week at this time. Except for these couple of days, I'm going to be speaking at a conference or whatever. So I'll just like go and do that and then I stick to it. And then the same thing with my job working with writers. I schedule like a manuscript evaluation for 3 weeks, maybe four. And I know again about how long that's going to take. So I time
yeah.
block. I'm going to do the reading part. I'm going to work on their evaluation. I'm going to work on edits, like slot everything in. And then I just, I have my calendar open all day and I'm like, okay, I allotted this much time for this. Am I going to stick to that today? Or am I going to go a little bit over, or do I need to move this to another time? And I find that works for me. And I could so easily see why it would be very frustrating for somebody to do that same thing because, if you miss a mark, a deadline for a lot of people, that feels really shitty. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I already fucked this up. Why even keep going?
Yeah.
But what's helped is just being able to be forgiving and work, like change how I schedule and time block things and how I commit to things has really helped me. So I think there's a lot of experimentation that goes into that. It's not like I just arrived at this beautiful schedule overnight.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
so
structure, man. I mean, just and being able to be flexible with it is, I mean, sort of foundational. Depends on each person, but yeah, that's really great.
yeah, I'm curious how I mean, I don't want to ask you too many questions, I guess, if you want to ask me, but I'm curious how you juggle your projects.
Yeah. I mean, I've got, it's a good question. I have a love of Excel sheets and lists and structure. So I have a ton of timelines for a ton of different things and daily lists and like monthly lists of like things I need to tackle. Um, what is I think frustrating or really like difficult for me is I have at times, not always, but like let's say 10 different things that are all like fantastical. And so, or they're all at like a very early developmental level. And I struggle not with like how to organize the work I'm going to do, but how to prioritize. So, which is
Mm.
maybe for my mind, it's a different thing. It's like I can get anything done because I can organize it, but like how to focus on what I should be doing and like say like, yes, this is the most important project or like part of a project is hard for me because I have like films and then this and then I'm like, oh, I'll write a book. Like I definitely can be scattered, I guess is the thing. Um, but I like it. I understand kind of like what I struggle with, but it's like that's me. I think if you I don't like having someone else tell me what my schedule is. Like, I'll figure it out. If
Mm.
that does that make sense? I don't know. Like, I'm happy with my chaos because it exists in like 25 Excel sheets and like, but I also can kind of like understand where I struggle um with just making Excel sheets for fun instead of maybe doing something else that could be more productive.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny you mentioned, wow, 25 different sheets. Do you ever have this thought, which is so morbid, but do you ever think like, if I died today, how would anybody navigate all of the things I have left open and I need to get finished?
First of all, I love that question because I think my fucking Google Drive is like a gem. If I died, if I died today, like I just would, I guess, need to give somebody my password. But like I would love for someone to dive in there. I'd be like, I hope you do something with like my 85 drafts of my memoir that I have and like 17 ideas for movies or 1700. Like, I hope, yeah, I don't know what anyone would do. I feel like, I mean, whenever I see my old doctor, she's not my doctor anymore, but she would always be like, what's your will? Like, you need to have a will. I sorry that we're going there, but it just made me think of that. And then whenever I would go to the bank, the banker's like, make sure the banker person is always like, make sure your partner has passwords to all of your stuff for when you die, like will related. So in my like the question you had about like what would someone do with those like Excel sheets or decipher it, I feel like nobody would care. And all the world cares about is like what are people going to do with like your money and stuff like that, and I have no money. So that's really not a problem. But the question of what would someone do with like your plans and your drafts is a good one and an interesting one. Would you like want people to do anything with yours? Sorry, we're getting
Um,
sort of like when I die questions, which I don't really even know what that means,
no,
but
this is
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I need to get a banker and a new doctor because no one
Right?
asked me
No, my
things. Wow.
doctor was terrible. My that doctor is terrible. Why don't she said a lot of mean stuff to me. So she's
Oh,
she's
okay.
gone. Yeah, yeah. She was
Good riddance.
obsessed with wills. Yeah.
Yeah, curious. Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, okay, so I had wisdom tooth surgery 2 weeks ago and went super well, would recommend, fun time. But yeah, before I went, I wrote down my passwords to my Notion doc. So you have your Google Drive, I have my Notion doc. That's like
Yeah.
my little home of all of my goods. Um, yeah, so I just wrote down passwords to everything. I put a little post-it note and put it under my laptop. And I was like, Abby, just in case, I need you to like publish these things if you can, like just something. I was just like,
I
don't want
love
them to die when I die.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Abby said okay, but then Abby was like, you're not gonna die. This happens all the time. And Abby was right.
First of all, it's beautiful. There's something about wanting, that's like so much care for your work. And I think that's really beautiful that you did that. It's also very interesting that you thought you were going to die in your dental surgery. Where's that come from?
Well, I've never I've never had surgery before. Um, I don't know. I don't think I was like super concerned I was gonna die, but I
Okay.
think I was like, just in
You made
case.
plans.
I did. I mean, very loose plans. It was that one sticky note, and that's it. Oh, and I texted my parents, but I wasn't like, I might die today. Love you. We don't say we love each other.
Okay. That's my next question, but we'll save that
No,
for,
it won't. Yeah, no, but it was
well,
good. I survived. Teeth
I
are
will,
gone.
both top and bottom or just the,
Yeah, all four wisdom teeth. And everybody I told like, oh, I got mine out when I was a teenager. I'm like, good for you. I'm 29, just got them out, and I'm proud.
I will say, I think that I got mine out also 4-4, I mean 2-2, in my Yeah, in my late 20s or early 30s. And actually, it's really good that you didn't consult with me before. And I think I did tell Abby this story recently, so I don't think she told you. But I had a fucked up, whatever,
Oh,
wisdom teeth experience. They fucked it
what
up.
happened?
I got lockjaw.
Oh, Abby did say that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
they
gosh.
fucked it up. And my grandmother, who's kind of crazy, God bless her, she picked me up from the surgery and they tried to like offer me Tylenol threes. Do you know what that is? But in whatever, with codeine. And my grandmother was like, fuck that. Like, you need to give her something stronger. So they gave me, what's that called? Oxycontin. So they gave me oxys. And so I
Oh my
was just
God.
on oxys with lockjaw and I couldn't open my mouth. It was very, very bad. Very bad feelings. I was taking
Oh.
oxy like 4 times a day. It was terrible. But so good thing we didn't talk before because that sucked.
Shit.
Where are you from? This is a genuine question. We've sort of talked about this. I just don't know this. So I'm
Yeah, I think
asking.
I don't tell people. I forget. It's like, you live in New York, what else matters? I grew up all over. My dad was in the military. He's now retired, but he was a diplomat. So we moved from embassy to embassy pretty much. I lived in the US mostly. So like where do we live? Maine, beautiful up there. Colorado. We lived in Washington, DC for a couple of years. Um, we lived abroad, which is the fun stuff. I lived in Paris for 3 years, and I lived in Namibia. It's a country above South Africa.
Hmm.
I always stipulate that. I think most people know where it is now, but um, yeah, for 2 years I lived in Namibia, and then I came back to the U.S. and moved to Boonville, Missouri, which is just exactly like what it sounds like. A small little town. Yeah, and then I went to college in Iowa, so again the Midwest. Bopped around a couple of years, living in Portland, Oregon, back to DC. I lived in St. Louis for 6 months, which was interesting. And then here for 7 years, 7 years since last month.
What did your dad do in the military?
He was what they call a diplomat or like a foreign attaché. He was like, the way I described it as a child was he was like a formal spy. So they would trade information, I think, from like, the American embassy to the other embassies. He did other stuff too. And I really should remember, but I like to remember him as a spy. That
I
feels
love
good
that.
for
Yeah,
me.
spy is very fun. And also I like the idea. And when you say formal spy, do you mean just kind of like a spy that's on the books?
Yeah, not like undercover, as
Yeah.
far as I know. He did some wild trainings. I remember he went abroad to do some like car trainings where he learned how to do all the stunts they do in the movies, except for not like stunts. He was learning in case he ever got hijacked or like tried to attempt to kidnap or something. Yeah, so yeah, really intense stuff. And yet, he's just my dad. Yeah.
Do you feel uh like grateful for having lived in a lot of places? Was it fun or what was
It was so fun, and I felt totally fine about it until my therapist this year was like, "Hey, Hannah, do you think maybe the reason why you have a hard time staying in friendships and relationships and like why you're always seeking novelties because you moved every year too?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my therapist is so smart." I don't know why that had never occurred to me before, but it was like, whoa, mind-blowing stuff. Yeah, and I think I loved it, and it's absolutely like I had no regrets or was never sad to move. But now as an adult, trying to make friends and keep friends, but
Yeah.
keeping can be kind of hard. This comes up and I'm like, yeah, maybe that is a little sad that if this is why,
Do you
all the
think that's because you always kind of understood friendship as something that like not like had a time limit, but because you were always kind of like just a different way of understanding friends?
yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I don't
I
know. I
mean,
have no idea what I'm talking about.
We'll have to bring in my therapist. But yeah, I think exactly. I think I was like, this is how they work. You come to a new place, a new school or whatever, and you meet your friends and it's wonderful and you're so happy to be friends with them. And then you leave after a year or two. And then I don't really keep in touch after like the first couple of months or the first year. And that's just the way it goes. I never felt sad about it. But yeah, now I'm like, "Hmm, it would be nice to have friends in the way that some people I know have friends. Like I went to a wedding recently and they had all of their friends there. And I was like, wow, what a concept. They've known these people since they were in middle school or
Huh.
younger. It's like, wow, I don't have that. And if I do get married, which I think about, I would think I would like to someday. I'm like, who would I invite? And so yeah, I get a little like introspective at weddings and just in general. I think about friendships a lot. I talked about Abby to Abby about friendships just today.
What'd you say? You tell me about your girlfriends. What did Abby have to say about friendships?
Um, what did Abby have to say? Yeah, I think I was just mostly like, I've reached a point. uh, I think I go through phases where I'm super happy to be alone most of the week, most of the month. Like I
Mm,
don't need friendships. I'm busy in work, busy with writing. And I've gotten to a place in my work right now where I feel like I'm getting a lot of clients, which is a wonderful feeling. And I think I'm like, oh, but I've neglected this other part of my life, which is socializing.
yeah.
Not just having friends, but having community too. Oh, and I also run queer soccer league. And
This
that,
is perfect. I was gonna ask about that. So yeah.
which is so cool. The people who come are so lovely. Like genuinely, I'm so surprised by how awesome these people are. Yeah, but that went on pause for a little bit. So I was just like, yeah, missing out on community and stuff. And then this week, I've been like, I'm ready, I think, to invest my time into more community and friendships in a way that I just haven't been because I've been busy with work. So it's like more on my mind now because of that.
But that is kind of interesting though that you maybe struggle or like have issues around like longer term friendships, but I know you started queer soccer, which is a huge deal and also means so much to so many people. So like you also kind of started this very cool community thing that brings people together. I don't know what you think, how big of a deal that is to you, but from the outside, it seemed very special.
It's so special. I started it because there was another team that just it was called Dyke Soccer and I love Dyke Soccer. I was like such I went to like every game. But then the pandemic happened and they sort of dissolved, at least in the New York area. I think they have other chapters elsewhere. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll do it. There's more to that story. There's actually quite a bit of drama involved with the story, which we do not need to get into, but sometime I'll probably tell you if we haven't talked about this
With
already.
Dyke Soccer?
No, no, but with my own team, like there
Yeah.
just was some years with, as I have since learned, there is a lot there's like a lot of stories similar to mine when you're starting like a pickup group or just like a small grassroots little thing.
Hmm.
There can be just some issues. But now yeah, it's wonderful. Like I said, the people who come are just like really kind. They like to play soccer, but mostly they just want to socialize after soccer and they keep coming back, which is wonderful. And I feel like I have built a community. And I noticed after the first couple of months, I felt purpose. And like, how you're always, that's like something I'd always thought of as kind of like I'd never used that word before and felt like, oh, I'm lacking purpose or I need
Purpose.
purpose.
Okay.
But
Hmm.
all of a sudden, when I started queer soccer, I was like, oh, I get it now. I get it. Like I feel like what I do matters in a way that it never really had before. I mean, I've been working nonprofits, I've been doing good work, but I had never really seen what I did make a difference in a way that queer soccer was doing. And it was so cool because like people meet there, they, make friendships, they find partners like I did with Abby, but other people also have partners, which is cool. Yeah. Um,
I mean,
and
we'll just a pause to say that I remember because I know your partner, Abby, better than I know you, but I also remember when Abby was literally like down on themselves about relationships and friendship and needing community. And Abby just, the story in my mind, which is a bit of a movie, was just like Abby walking through the park and just like seeing a bunch of cool people playing soccer. And then the way that Abby tells it, I think, which is maybe this is all a lie, but then one of you or some people are just like, hey, why don't you come on over? And then Abby is just like, yeah, and I made all these like cool friends. And like also I've made out, kiss people. And I was like, that's amazing. I don't know. So that's like very cool, right? I don't know.
yes, it is cool. I remember that day. I was the one who told Abby to come over. And then
Amazing.
subsequently that we didn't talk, yeah, for like the next couple of months. I was in a relationship. We didn't have any interest in each other in terms of even friendship. So it's funny. Yeah, we met in real life and I love that. Yeah, queer soccer was really this nice space that is still going. We're in our fourth year. Is that right? I think we're in our fourth year now, or about to be. Just didn't think it was gonna last this long. But yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of it. And it's taught me a lot about business too,
In what?
which
In
is
what
another.
way?
So I have been working in marketing before, so I knew a little bit about how to generate leads, how to get people interested in stuff, right? But I didn't really know how to be a leader yet. Um, at least not, yeah, not at this scale. So that was, whew, I learned a lot of things and a lot of things the hard way. One of the biggest things I learned is like making decisions is so important. Also, you said earlier about prioritizing. I think that's huge too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, with making decisions, um, people really want somebody to make decisions that are good, which makes sense. And then they
Yeah.
want them to stand for those decisions. And so I really struggled with it first, listening to everybody and then trying to give everybody what they wanted. I really wanted everybody to be happy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not possible. And
Mm-mm.
it took me so long to learn that. And it's like one thing to hear that and be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I agree. And then one thing to put that in practice. And so, yeah, it took me some time. But now I really do feel like I'm there. Like I understand I'm gonna do the best I can by everybody and myself included. And like, I'm gonna make the choice and that I'm gonna stand by it, even if, someone's like, oh, wish this had happened instead. I'm way better about being like, it's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I'm gonna be fine. But yeah, it was hard. That was a big learning. And prioritizing things too was big because I had a lot of ideas and I was like, no, this is what I can manage. This is what I'm gonna do. Um, and then that's helped me in my freelancing business now too.
Yeah, straight up building a business. Yeah. And queer soccer is also you don't make money necessarily. You just cover your costs, right?
I do. I make money and I cover my costs.
Yeah.
So it is a business. Yeah. It's not a nonprofit, which people used to ask me back in the day. I forgot about that. Yeah, so I make that very clear. We're not a nonprofit. I'm very much running a business and I'm, paying myself for my labor as well. It's not a lot,
And
but
as you should, right? You're running an organization. It's just a small organization.
yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
there's people who would probably disagree and who have disagreed with me on that. But I
There we go. That's part of it, baby.
it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but I feel like the queer soccer is in a great place right now. I like the people who come.
That's very beautiful. Abby told me a bit ago that you listen to one of the only podcasts that I listen to, the Pulling the Thread with
But
Elise,
yeah.
and I love it. I don't really know a lot of people who listen to it, but I freaking love it. Um, and I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about you, and what I think is very cool about that podcast is she just has on so many thinkers um that are all about like untangling the human condition, whether that's like more spiritual or psychological. That's her thing. And I find that you, even though we don't know each other that well, I also feel like I kind of know you vicariously through Abby. You're very thoughtful and you're very considered, and I really think it's cool that you seem to engage with your own thoughts and then you like build business out of them. And that's very hard for a lot of people, and myself included, to kind of be like proactive with that. I don't know if that's making sense, but um that's like how you come across to me. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask you like what you would like. I don't know what you like about that podcast, or like how peeling back the layers and all of the feelings. I know you're a big therapy person. So like how that fits into like your work, or even just like how you live your life. I feel like just you're somebody who thinks about all the feelings and then you try to be productive with that. And I don't mean productive and like make money. I just mean you try to like like be a person who's okay in the world.
Hmm. This is such a big question.
It's
Let
huge.
me see.
Sorry. Final question. Just wanted to drop that one
I
out there.
don't know if I'm gonna necessarily answer it. But here we go. Okay. Well,
Right.
first off, yes, I really like Elise Lonan. Um, I've been following her since her Goop days. I don't know if you listen to the Goop podcast with
I'm not a gooper, but I do know she comes from goop.
yeah, she does, is very similar, I would say. It's definitely better now, but yeah, I think that her stuff is really cool. I love to nerd out about things in a way that she does too. Although, um, okay, so what were you saying about
Feelings, layers. What's up with that?
right? Um, I think the way I like thoughtful, the word you use, that's so nice. Calculated is probably good too. I do like to see the big picture. This helps me with my writing, this helps me with my developmental editing, but also it helps me when I'm choosing what projects I like to do. Because you're talking about how you and I may have kind of discussed this maybe, and how like maybe you have a lot of ideas and you don't finish them necessarily.
Hmm.
And I totally understand that, but I've always been someone who, when I start something, I want to finish it. And
Hmm.
I've really, I wasn't very good at that when I was a kid. I had a lot of projects that were left open-ended or that I never finished. And I just became so important to me to finish the damn thing. And so I started doing things that were more bite-sized. Like I said, I started doing strategies like time blocking on my calendar, working in smaller phases, setting goals that were actually attainable, things that were starting to work for me better. And then I was finishing my projects and I was like, I like the way this feels. So like I've been able to write several books. I've been able to start, this company, now my next company. Yeah, I really do get things done, which I'm proud of. Um, but yeah, I think about things a lot and I really try to map out my steps and everything and where it's going to go first before I make a choice and then I like commit to it. Which I realized, yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily think that way, which is interesting to me. I like to hear about how other people's projects work and how their brains work when they're thinking about the path forward. Or some people, just jump in, and I've never been one of those people either. I like to really know, what is this going to look like? What's it going to feel like when I start this new venture?
I
So I
mean,
kind of,
it's very interesting to hear you say that. And it's also interesting to hear you read, because I don't feel like I'm someone that doesn't finish things. I feel like I just jump the fuck into things. And actually, it's kind of part of my process is like, if I understand this fully, I won't do it. Like, if I understand the extent to which whatever of what I'm going to do, like, I'm not going to do it. So I will, most of the things that I have completed, I have not really fully understood what I was doing when I started. But I think that that has to do with being some part of me that I'm like not fully conscious is usually the thing that like makes me start a project. So maybe that has to do with like how I start it. Um, but I think it's a personality thing. Like I think, does that feel right? Like I don't know. I feel like we kind of like, I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, too. I think there's also this element of challenge and
Mm-hmm.
surprise because it's yeah, it
Yes.
sounds like you wanna feel surprised when you start something and you want to feel
Yeah.
like the unknown is still there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get that too. Although I guess I like to have a few less unknowns, perhaps. That makes me feel more comfortable. But
Yes.
yeah, I
But that's logical. That is logical. And I think like yeah, I mean even just like isolating for each person the extent to which they are comfortable with the unknown is helpful in defining then like what that person's process probably looks like. Because
yeah.
that's like such a huge deal. Um, I mean, just being comfortable with the unknown and like risk, which I think I'm too comfortable with, to be perfectly honest. But
I mean, I wish I was more comfortable with it. Like, ah, I want to be more spontaneous, but I just, I think I'm realizing it's really not who I am right now. Because like Abby went to go to Fire Island with some friends and was like, you should come. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to want to come, but like what is the sound volume level gonna be like at night? Because at night I get so antsy about sleeping well. And I was like, is it gonna be dark enough for me to sleep? Is it gonna be too loud for me? Like all these different things. Like I'm just that doesn't I'm just not a spontaneous person because I really want to know, am I going to sleep well? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be around people that I feel safe and comfortable with? And I do wish that I could be a little bit more like that, but not today.
yeah, not
Maybe.
today. You know, but and that's also kind of interesting thinking about how you lived your life, how your childhood, just like moving around so much and probably having to get used to different environments. Like maybe it's just kind of cool that you want to just have your environment. You,
I guess so. Gosh, you've been speaking to my therapist too.
I called them. Yeah, I called them.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
oh, Hannah, thank you so much for talking to me. I guess can we just end with like you just saying something about the kind of writing that you do? Because I in my mind it's do you do like YA-esque novels or an interest in that kind of just the kind of themes or yeah, what you're working on.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I love to write just about everything and I love to read just about everything too, which I feel like sounds like not true, but it really is.
I believe you.
My first story was YA. I love YA. I love new adult and I love adult. I'm not a huge fan of writing middle grade, but that's just me.
What is
Yeah, I
that?
wrote
As someone who, let's just say I've never read a book. What does that mean?
yeah, so young adult, teen stuff, good stuff.
Yeah.
Adult is like what adult is, and then new adult is kind of like sometimes it's like romanticy, like sometimes it's like very erotic in nature, but it's usually just like something that's kind of in between young adult and adult.
What's adult though? Like for grown-ups or sexy?
Oh yeah, sure. So well, it can be both. Usually when I want like sexy stuff, I say like explicit, or people like to
Love
say it has
that.
spice, it has heat, which are great words as well. But
Heat.
adult just means like,
Nice.
yeah, right? Audience is gonna be adult. So you're either writing for an adult audience or a young adult audience, but also it crosses over. Like Hunger Games was YA, but everybody loves Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote, so my first book was a thriller. It was a YA thriller. Kind of got, it was like a gothic novel, so it has like a big scary, school in my case, and creepy stuff happening. So that was really fun. And then I started writing my second book, which is like probably adult. It's more of like a action fantasy book. And then my next book I want to write is literary fiction, so it's going to be a little bit more for an adult audience, I think, and it's going to be about this, well, it's just about this woman who starts coming undone, right? There's a lot of
Love
narratives.
that.
So yeah, they're so fun to read and write. So that'll be my next project, I think.
That's awesome. I love that. And I hope you write like or any of your some sexy stuff is fun. I don't know. I'm 12 years old. I'm 12 years old. I'm 12 years old.
It is fun. It's so surprisingly hard to write because you don't want to be like so cheesy and cringe,
Yeah.
but it's really hard to read because you're writing about sex. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion. Maybe there's some writers out there like I was born to do this. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean that's another conversation which we can save, and I wonder if it like I truly think that like sex in movies is kind of impossible, and I've rarely seen any of it done well. So I would imagine that like similarly just difficult. Sex is hard.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'd be interested to hear their thoughts on that. Sex and movies is a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. Yeah, sex is seemingly easy but very difficult, which kind of applies to life, right? I think this is a good way to end, right?
Good, full circle. We started with death and now sex. So yeah, no,
Sex.
it's good.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my God, Hannah, pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, this was nice. Thank you so much for having me and talking to me about all the things.
Of course, it's was pleasure is mine. That was really, really awesome. Tell Abby I say hi and I'll see you soon.
I will. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye. Ciao. Thank you.